Welcome into another episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I am Will Thomas, and we have our final schedule breakdown and season prediction video of this series today with the Vanderbilt Commodores. So Vandy is coming off of the best year in program history last season. They won 10 games behind Diego Pavia and some really key players on that offense and that defense. Clark Lee really has that program turned around, but they missed out on the playoff because they didn't handle their business in their two hardest games against Texas and against Alabama. So even though they won 10 games out of the SEC, they just didn't quite have the right caliber of win. Even though they had a Heisman finalist at quarterback, they were just a little bit short last year, were the Commodores. And this year, you have that base laid. So you sort of hope that like you're right back there, that maybe in a with a situation where it's been constantly progressing, constantly getting better, that maybe you'll make the playoff this year. I think that this is absolutely going to be a bit of a down year for Vanderbilt. I think they just regress a little bit because it's really hard to replace Diego Pavia. It's really hard to replace Eli Stowers. This is regardless of what the program was. This could be Alabama that we're talking about. And if they lost a guy like Pavia and a guy like Stowers on offense, I'd be saying the same things. And if you lose some of your guys on defense, I'd be saying the same things. So I think that Vandy overall, they're probably going to be a little bit worse than they were last year, this year. But you have to, just keep building towards the future because you do have Jared Curtis at quarterback. You still have a bunch of your weapons. You have some young guys. The recruiting is getting way better. So let's go through Vandy's schedule this year. It will be a little bit underwhelming given last season, but I believe that Vanderbilt is really in the building phase right now for the next few years. So Vandy gets an easy start. In week one, they host Austin Peay at home. That'll be a good little week one, just first game. Show the people Jared Curtis in a live game setting. Try and just limit a weaker offense with your defense. Get some of those playmakers back on the field and get loose. So it'll be a week one win against Austin Peay. And then in week two, they host Delaware. A second game to really keep working out those kinks. You've had one game of experience for Jared Curtis. Get him back out there against another weak opponent that he can really beat up on. So week two against Delaware, I've got another win. And then in week three, they host NC State. They have a fun little out-of-conference game here against the ACC and a Wolfpack team that does have some good players. I don't think that they have the roster depth that Vanderbilt has. And Clark Lee, I'm willing to put him against any coach in the country at this point. So give me a win for Vanderbilt against NC State as well to begin 3-0 before they hit their 9 straight SEC games. And their first game in conference play is at Auburn. I have Vandy losing this game to the Tigers. I think that Auburn's talent profile is probably just a little bit better overall. And you're obviously on the plains. And part of why I think this too is because I have Auburn losing in week 3 to Florida. So I have Auburn losing their first conference game, which will also be at home. I don't see them losing their first two on the plains out there, especially to a Vanderbilt team that I do believe they're stronger than. So give me Auburn over Vanderbilt in week 4. Vandy begins conference play 0-1. Then in week 5, it just gets harder for the Commodores. They go to Georgia. They go to Athens. Vandy's just going to be outmatched in this game. Now, if this game was in Nashville, I'd have a hard time picking against Vandy, honestly, because we've seen that place really be magical, give them one massive win a year for the past few seasons. With this game being in Athens, it being at Georgia, against a Bulldogs team who knows that they need to keep pushing through, keep winning games to make a good playoff push, they'll be too much. So I've got Georgia over Vanderbilt as well, 0-2 to begin conference play for the Commodores. And then in week 6, they come home, they get Ole Miss. I had a really hard time picking against Vandy in this game, but I did. I'm going with Ole Miss over Vanderbilt. I just believe the offensive firepower, it might be too much. I think that the dynamic nature of Chambliss, of Keyone Lacey, is going to be just too much for their defense. Now, could Vandy possibly have an offense of their own that can go shot for shot with Ole Miss? Totally. At this point in week 6, even though Curtis will have some experience under his belt, I trust Trinidad way more than I do Curtis at this point. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss over Vandy there in week 6 in Nashville to start Vandy off 0-3 in conference play. But then in week 7, Vandy hosts Arkansas. They finally get a home, easier conference game, and they'll beat the Razorbacks. I do believe Arkansas could be decently good this year in the sense of where they can compete in individual games with teams more talented than them. But not in this one. I'll take Vandy over Arkansas. 0-3 to begin conference play. You're desperate for a win in the SEC. Give me Vanderbilt over Arkansas at home. And in week 8, Vanderbilt goes to Kentucky in their final game before their bye week. I think at this point you're just kind of a little bit beat up. You played 7 straight games against teams like Georgia, like Ole Miss, like Auburn. Now you have to go on the road to a Kentucky team that I do believe is under the radar a little bit. I have a loss here. So I have Vandy being 4-4 through 8 games heading into their bye week, 1-4 in conference play. And coming out of their bye week in week 10, they go to Mississippi State. I've got Vandy being able to take down the Bulldogs here. I like Clark Lee over Jeff Lebby as a head coach. I think that Kamario Taylor at quarterback for the Bulldogs, I'm really excited about him. I just believe he's going to be, high ceiling, low floor in terms of like mistakes and consistency. So give me Vandy in this spot. Only one conference win coming out of your bye. Go get a win and beat the Bulldogs. And in week 11, Vanderbilt comes home. They host Alabama. Last time Bama was in Nashville, we know what happened. Diego Pavia took them down. I don't believe that can happen again. I'm not sure they have a second win over Bama in Nashville in just a 3-year span in them this year. So I'll go Bama over Vandy. I just believe that the depth of talent around everywhere else, obviously it is more in Tuscaloosa. And in a year where with Kalen DeBoer, there's really some pressure to make some true noise in the playoff. Like really make a run to maybe the semis, maybe even get to the national championship. You've got to go win this game. So I'll take Bama over Vanderbilt in Nashville. In week 12, Vandy in their last road game, they go to Gainesville to play the Florida Gators. Florida is a team that I think the talent has been there in Gainesville for the past few years. You're just waiting on the right coach to unlock it. I believe that Summerall is going to be able to at least damage the lock. I believe that he's going to really be able to crack some new potential out of this team, all that talent. He was able to retain so many of their studs. I don't have Florida losing a game at home. And if they do, I don't believe that Vandy is the one that breaks that streak. So I'll take Florida over Vanderbilt in Gainesville to push the Commodores to 5-6, heading into their last game of the year when they host Tennessee at home. This rivalry is really starting to get hot over the past 3 years with Vandy's, ability to go beat them. They beat them in Neyland last season, and I have Vandy taking down Tennessee again. The Vols are young. They're incredibly talented. I'll talk about how much I love their roster, but I'm going to love it even more next year. And I think this year, if they do go to Nashville when Vandy is 5-6, this season hasn't quite been what they've expected. But you have all these young pieces. You have your young quarterback that you really want to get momentum for and keep building around. This is going to be a massive win to get to a bowl game. If nothing else, just to get to that bowl game. Get your eligibility for a bowl for the postseason. Beat your rival at home. I think they do. So I'll take Vandy over Tennessee in Week 13 to end their year 6-6. So like I said, it's a regression year for Vanderbilt after what they did last season. But it's kind of hard to see how it's not. Maybe it's not to the extent that I'm saying where it's 6-6, but you lose a Heisman semifinalist who totally turned your program around. You lose one of the most dynamic tight ends in the country. They're losing some major players on the defensive line. It hurts. It hurts, and I don't see a way that with Vanderbilt this year, they're as good as they were last year. I just don't. I think it's a law of average where they regress a little bit. Could it be 7-5 or 8-4? Sure. But I do believe Vandy takes a bit of a step back, breaking in Jared Curtis. But as they keep heading towards the future, Clark Lee is the right guy for that program, and I believe they're going to keep being a consistent threat in the SEC to really be a very, very solid team and make some noise on the door of the playoff again year after year. So that will do it for this video, but also our entire season prediction series. I'm just going to keep going, man. Every single day, we are doing college football and SEC football preview content until we kick off in August. So subscribe to me here and follow me on Twitter if you do want to keep seeing that. I've been Will Thomas, and I will see you next time.